Welcome to our study of Psalms. Today is Session 1, Introduction to Psalms. Many people think they understand what the Psalms are, but unfortunately, they actually have a lot of misunderstandings. And so today we're going to look at the 5 most common misconceptions about the Psalms. The first misconception is that David wrote all the Psalms. In fact, he wrote the majority of the Psalms, but not all of them. David is attributed with 73 of the Psalms, Asaph, 12 of the Psalms, the sons of Korah, 10 of the Psalms. Anonymously, we have 50 of the Psalms, and the remaining 5 are written by a variety of people, such as Moses, Solomon, Haman, and Ethan. However, to add to this, in the New Testament, 2 Psalms, the 2nd and the 95th, are ascribed to David. And in addition to that, in the Hebrew canon, Psalm 10, 43, and 88 are given authorship as extensions of the psalm preceding them. So since Psalm 9 was written by David, Psalm 9 and 10 were put together in the Hebrew edition of the text. Another misconception is that the Psalms were always one book. Actually, they were 5 books. What we have in Psalms is a collection. Volume 1, Psalm 1 through 41, talks about David and was covering a time period from around 1020 to 970 BC. After that, Volume 2 has Psalms 42 to 72. They seem to be penned predominantly by David and Korah, and they date to around, the collection of them at least, date to around the 8th century BC. Volume 3, Psalms 73 to 89, are also by David and Korah and date to the 8th century BC. The 4th volume we find in Psalms are Psalms 90 through 106, probably collected and even partially authored by Ezra or Nehemiah. This collection probably occurred around 430 BC. And finally, Volume 5, Psalms 107 to 150, were probably collected by Ezra or Nehemiah around 430 BC. Shortly after that time, and Jewish tradition says Ezra is the one that does this, that in the post-exilic time when the last of the Psalms were being written, he is the one that collected all of these into what is now called the Book of Psalms. And so when we look at the Book of Psalms, we're really seeing a litmus test on the spirituality, the emotional health, the events of ancient Israel and Judah as they unfolded and are reflected in their hymnal, so to speak. Another misconception is that the Psalms were written in one time period. Now, obviously, given the first 2 misconceptions, this is impossible. It was actually written in multiple time periods. For example, when we look at Psalm 137, verse 1, by the waters of Babylon, there we sat and wept when we remembered Zion. If we thought David was the author of all the Psalms, or they all had to fit into the united monarchy period of Israel's history, we'd have to raise questions like, when were they ever sitting in Babylon by rivers or waters? And remembered is past tense. When was Zion destroyed during the reign of David? Not to mention, sat and wept are also past tense. Well, the simple fact is these events never happened during the life of David. Rather, these are all events after 586 BC, when in fact Babylon had destroyed Jerusalem and exiled the people back with them as captives. It's thought that this was probably penned by Ezra or during the time of Ezra as they waited to return. Another misconception is that the Psalms are all hymns of praise. Well, they are all hymns, but they're not all praise. It is true that the Hebrew word tehillim means praise, and hence this is a common misunderstanding. Yes, they are called praise, but there's a lot of different kinds of psalms in this. And oftentimes, by the way, they're addressed to people like the choir master, and even explaining what tune to sing them to, and oftentimes even what instrument to use. In fact, one says, Psalm 6 and 12 actually, say that you're to play this or sing this according to the eighth. Now, we don't know if the eighth is a particular song tune, a melody. We don't know if that's a particular musical notation for the voice. We're not even sure if that's on an 8-stringed instrument. But it's obvious that when these hymns were sung, there were instructions, tunes, familiar melodies, as well as instrumentation used in all of them. And by the way, while there are numerous kinds of psalms, kind of like pie, you have pie, they're all hymns, but trying to divvy them up, cut them into pieces. Do you make it 4, 6, or 8 slices? Many different scholars try to divide up the Psalms into different categories. I'll be using C. Hassel Bullock's book, Encountering the Psalms, as my guide for our study. Yet another misconception, the Psalms are relatively unimportant. I mean, come on, the Psalms are in fact hymns. They're music. How could they possibly compare to something like the Torah or the prophets? Well, actually, they're really important. You see, the Psalms are the first book, the starting opening book of the Ketubim, the writings. The Hebrew canon had the Torah, and then it had the prophets, the Nevi'im, and then the third division of the Hebrew Bible was the Ketubim, the writings. And Psalms is the opening book of the Ketubim. This is probably why Jesus in Luke 24:44 said, the law of Moses and the prophets and the Psalms, meaning the entire collection of the Ketubim, not just the book of Psalms. But that should tell us that it's relatively important. In fact, C. Hansel Bullock comments that the order of the historical events, the detail of those events, and the balance given them in the historical books is fairly mimicked by the Psalms. The Psalms rely on the history of Israel for their content, and that whenever there's a little bit of a difference in the recounting of the event, it can usually be attributed to literary license or perhaps the preservation of some oral tradition that adds to the narrative. So what are we getting at? Well, first, that the Psalms are the spiritual litmus test for the later history of Israel and eventually Judah. It reflects the experiences of individuals in the monarchy, divided monarchy, and during the exile, and even post-exilic period in the Old Testament. Like all hymns, they are theologically laden, expressing theological ideals in experiential, practical, and personal terms. Poetry can speak what words alone fail to express. This is true not only of our affections for one another, but for God as well. And for this reason, The Psalms offer practical insight into the Christian life, which we'll focus on in our study throughout the Psalms. They will literally be a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. So, what are we going to be studying, and why are we studying only selected Psalms? And how were they selected? Well, first off, I'm trying to give us a sampling of each of the kind of Psalms given to us by Dr. Bullock. So he categorizes them into these 9 types of Psalms. And so we're going to try to study at least one from each of those commentaries or categories. In addition to that, Psalms was originally 5 books. So I want to make sure we pull at least one Psalm from each of those books. And then there are Psalms you just have to study, like the Good Shepherd or the Heavens Declare the Glory of God. And so as we move further, let us look at some reflection questions. What's your impression of the Psalms now? What would you like to get the most out of this study series? If you already have a favorite Psalm, which one is it? Why that one? And did this presentation raise any new questions about the Psalms? If yes, what? You may want to keep a journal through our study to write down your questions and your response to them. Just a note of interest, our cover art that I used at the very beginning of this presentation, it's not just any Hebrew manuscript. This is in fact the oldest manuscript of Psalms. It comes from the Dead Sea Scrolls, and it was discovered in Cave 4 and in Cave 11. And as such, they are indeed the oldest set of Psalms. Thanks for studying along with us. I hope this has been beneficial, and join us each week through the summer of 2018 for another look at Psalms. God bless.